Archbishop Coakley is distinguished guests, my brother priests and fellow deacons, as well as all of the people who came looking for something besides just lunch, but something that you can hold on to that can give you an idea of what hope looks like. I met one of your members and he asked me, so are you kind of like an expert in hope? And I'm like, no, I'm here just because I cook, honestly. So I want to thank you for the invitation to come. And I'm just going to say this. I hope, and this was my prayer before every talk, I hope that I'm not boring. I don't know if you know this, but some people think that Catholics are boring. Did you know that? Anyone here think that Catholic Church is sometimes boring? Raise your hand. Okay, my brother priest will be hearing your confessions at the end of this meal. And I will tell you that we as a Catholic Church, we can be boring. What I'd like to do is give you a definition of it so that faith, which precedes hope, will never be an experience that bores you, but excites you, but helps you to charge you forward in life. Boring can be defined as answering a question that no one is asking. So if I come up here and talk about quantum physics, I will be boring, unless you're a quantum physicist. And I will be boring because no one came here to learn about that. You came because you wanted to learn about hope. And with my background as a priest, this past year, I was ordained 25 years. And then, oh, thank you, I appreciate that. Most of my priesthood, however, was celebrated in the food scene. As you hear, I am a professional chef. I have a TV show that connects faith, food, and travel called Savoring Our Faith on EWTN every Sunday at 4:30 Eastern. Check your local listing. I also have written several books available where fine books are sold. And then I also am the priest who a few years ago beat Bobby Flay in a Food Network. No. Season 7, episode 1. And people always ask, how did I beat him? Well, I will tell you at the end of this talk. But now let's get to the hope. Because I can tell you, in the midst of that competition, I was honestly hoping that I didn't lose. You see, hope is a unique theological virtue in that it actually presumes pain and suffering. If you are living on the top of the game of your life, you don't have need for hope. If you are suffering, if you are struggling, if you are in pain, you ask for the gift of hope. Hebrews 11:1 says that hope is basically connected to that which you don't see, but something that you long for. So how do you find it? Well, what I hope to do is make connections to food and hope. And why? Because many of you came here and you were hoping the food would be good, hoping the speaker would be good. Listen, on Thanksgiving, there's a lot of faith. People are hoping that their turkey is moist. It is an amazing thing that if you are hungry, you will hope to be filled. So what I'd like to do is give you a little bit of a way to find hope. Hope could stand for the letters HOPE. This is not dogma, but it's just a pastoral approach on how you can discover hope in your life. H could stand for hospitality. And why is this key for hope? Well, it's interesting with the election of a new pope, whose name, by the way, I completely agree with. There are both sides of the political aisle. And let's admit, the church can sometimes sadly be divided in camps. There's one side of the camp that's hoping that Pope Leo will continue the Francis effect in various things. And then there's another side that's saying they're hoping that Pope Leo won't necessarily explain. You can see how difficult this is because you know exactly what group I'm talking about. But the reality is, I think God's hope is that all of God's children can feel welcomed at the table. What's the virtue needed? It's a virtue that is particularly Catholic. It's called hospitality. And it's the combination of two words, which makes it even more ironic. It's the combination of ospite, which means guest, and ostia, which means host. So in order for hospitality to be true, you have to be welcomed as a guest, but the guest has to welcome the host into them. It would be no different from a restaurant that forces you to eat something that you don't want to eat. And so I think in today's world, hospitality can give accurate hope to anyone who may not feel connected to the Catholic Church. But they have to do something. They have to see themselves as a guest in the house of the Father. But they also have to see themselves as a host to the mercy and the love of God. It is a very mutual exchange. And what we have to do as people of hospitality is welcome them through our doors, but present a message to them that makes them want to welcome what you are offering into their life. You cannot force feed broccoli down a teenager's throat unless the broccoli is from a recipe contained in one of my books. A grandmother actually said, "My kid don't get nothing out of church, and he don't eat his broccoli." So I asked her, "This is serious. How do you prepare your broccoli?" And she explained, and I said, "Ma'am, with all due respect, that sounds disgusting." Are we as Catholics in the virtue of hospitality plating grace.com? Are we making grace so well presented that faith becomes Instagrammable? Because you know that people take pictures of their food before they actually eat it. It's a good and demanding admonition for us. Are we presenting faith in such a way that people are going to be excited about it, take pictures of it, and share it on their social media feed? Well, I think in these past few weeks, with the passing of our beloved Pope Francis, the dignity of his funeral, and then, of course, the excitement of the conclave and the election, Abemus Papam, people are just going nuts. You know what we got to do? Keep showing the beauty of our faith. What does that require? Another ingredient to discover hope, and that's O. It's called obedience. It's the virtue that made Jesus truly one with the Father. He did the Father's will because he was obedient. And a lot of people think, but obedience is just for nuns and priests. That ain't the case at all. Wives, be obedient to your husbands. That's how people will interpret St. Paul's letter. But then if you just keep reading, it's going to say, and husbands, love your wives as Christ loves his church. And what kind of love is that? Obedient love. The Father actually listens to the church. It's interesting, but God, the Almighty Father, actually obeys me as a broken priest when I say, send down your Holy Spirit upon these gifts and you make them holy. God is obedient to me. And why? Because God is the author of hope. I think what we need is a world that's more obedient to the will of the Father. But on the basic level, can we just understand what obedience means? It means tending towards that which we hear. And in a world that is so divided because we are hearing such cacophony, can we at least spend some time and listen to each other? I'm going to tell you that one of my greatest dreams is to cook for the next presidential candidates. And we actually have something like that. It's called the Al Smith Dinner. It's a Catholic philanthropist from New York, supporter of Catholic charities. He wanted to make sure that the opposing candidates would actually sit down and they would listen to each other, make fun of themselves and one another. It was just a time for the candidates to show to the world that while we disagree, we don't have to be divided. We can still be united. Where can obedience happen? At the dinner table. So my whole work and operation started as plating grace, bringing families back around the dinner table, because if you invite God to the table, God can transform this table into a desk where the greatest lessons in life are learned. And what does it require to learn the lessons of life? Obedience, listening, active listening to one another. And if you're willing to listen, you might even hear your stomach grumble. And that is a good question. What do you hunger for? And where do you go to be fed? Because I can tell you the devil is also a master chef. The devil is a master at plating sin, making bad things look good. And we, not discerning, we eat it up because the devil has a way of making us obedient to our lowest senses and a life without virtue. We have to understand that obedience is not just for priests and nuns. It's for couples to listen to each other. It's for parents and children. Children listening to parents. And ready for this? Parents, be obedient to your children, which means listen to them. Because when they are acting like idiots, and not that your children would ever do that, you got to hear that what they are hungering for is not for more gifts and fancy toys. Parents, your kids are hungering for you to spend time with them. You can see that obedience is very difficult. That's why we need to practice it. And active obedience isn't just what am I hearing, or, like in psychology, sometimes you'll hear that phrase. Active listening is saying to somebody, what I hear you say is, and then you repeat it. That's not active listening. That's actively annoying, okay? Active listening is, God, what are you telling me through the cries of the poor? God, what are you telling me when someone has a disagreement with me? Obedience requires a ton of humility. And that's why I'm here to talk about it, because I am so humble. I am so proud of my humility. I mean, just hearing that, isn't that disgusting? Which is why another ingredient can accompany obedience. And it's a virtue that this world doesn't like. It's the virtue of purity. And I know as soon as people hear purity, they automatically think of the sins that begin with S. You know what word I'm talking about, right? What is it? Sacrifice. You're absolutely right. You see, what's interesting about purity is that people automatically limit it to a body part. But it's actually an attitude of being one with the Father. And we all know what the Beatitudes say. Blessed are the pure of heart. They shall see God. That's why purity is such an important source of hope. Because we sometimes don't see God because we're just not living a pure life. We got to almost clean the lenses, clean our souls so that God can become more visible. And you're absolutely right that the S word is a form of sanctification And it is a form of sacrifice. And so if we are to take purity seriously, might it first begin with us just getting back to practicing reconciliation a little bit more frequently? It's one of those things that people don't realize. It's one of the greatest gifts we have in the Catholic Church. And it's funny because sometimes my Protestant brothers and sisters who are Protestants are like, I don't need to confess to a man. But they do it on the Jerry Springer show all the time. But the difference is there's actually no real forgiveness. And I am always just so impressed when I hear how non-Catholics who've become Catholic and they go to confession for the first time, they're always so scared. Heck, I've been a priest 25 years and I'm still slightly afraid to go to my confessor. But thankfully, again, one of the words of Pope Francis early in his pontificate, he said, you might get tired of asking forgiveness, but God never tires of forgiving you. We have to get into the practice and the attitude because guess what? I have met saints, pure of heart. Guess where? In the confessional. And you might be shocked, especially since some of the work that I do is with ex-cons. I hire them in my restaurant and on my food truck. And I used to go to the prisons and hear confessions. And you're thinking, were they saints? Well, technically, when you go to confession and you tell the truth sets you free. And in that freedom, you become the saint in the making. So maybe if we want to find hope, consider finding it in that little box with that little light above. It's almost as if the Motel 6 ain't got nothing on the Catholic Church. Our light is always on. By the way, do you know that reference? Well, then you're old. But there is hope for you. It's contained in the last ingredient of this presentation, and it's E, encouragement. Now, this is obviously a good word, but do we know what it means? Because it technically and theologically can relate to food. Let me explain. So at the heart of the word encouragement is the word core, and that is the word for heart. That's why if you are encouraged, it's almost as if someone put the heart back into you. If you are discouraged, it is your heart has been taken out of you, discharged from you. Now, what does this have to do with food? Well, let me explain. Because I don't just simply cook on TV Sundays at 4:30 Eastern. I cook to connect faith and food. And it all started when I was in the seminary. We actually had a silent retreat one day, and we had a psychotherapist leading the discussion. And during our meals, we were asked not to talk, but to eat in silence and to listen to meditations. And this psychotherapist, spiritual director, made us meditate on our food, which a lot of my brother seminarians at the time thought was stupid. And honestly, it kind of was silly. We're a bunch of men. We just want to eat. But now we have to meditate on the color, the plating, the smell. How did it make you feel? It made me feel hungry. But for me, meditating on food started to become spiritual. And I got even emotional. And not just because I'm Filipino, but because I started to realize that that food was connected to people and their hands, and I didn't even know them, from the waiter to the cook, to the butcher, to the farmer, to the delivery driver. And ultimately, if you keep tracing it back, it eventually would lead to God, who encouraged all of us, including his chosen people, the Jews, by promising them a land flowing with, but they had to fast in the desert for how long? Okay, some of you are getting it right. 40 years, not 40 days. And that fasting made them hungry for the feast. It's almost like when we tell our children, don't eat that before dinner, it will ruin your appetite. We have to know that God wants to put his heart in us. We just have to hunger for it. That's why the fasting practice is key to finding hope. Because remember, you only pray for hope when you are in need of something. And that's why we have to take seriously the hour fast before you receive communion. It's a practice that we have today. At one point, when Catholics were not as wimpy, it used to be a 12-hour fast. Now it's only an hour. And some people ask, and when you say an hour, do you mean at the point you receive communion or at the point math starts? So I did the math because I'm Asian, I'm good at it. And I realized that if you just simply had to fast from the point you receive communion, you would have to fast, 15 minutes? You mean we can't be hungry for more than 15 minutes? Clearly not. That's why on Mondays, we have to clean the church up from all the Cheerios that people bring. Because as soon as a baby cries, we shove food down their throat, and they hunger for nothing. We got to be hungry again. And that's why we have to pay attention to what St. Paul wrote in his letter to the Filipinos. He said it very clearly. Our bellies have become our gods. So what do you hunger for? Well, I think as Catholics, our hearts are hungry for God. And so guess what God does, being an all-providing Father? He gives it to us in the greatest gift we call the Eucharist. I just got back from Rome about a week ago. I was there originally for the Carlo Acutis canonization. Turned out to be a funeral. And then we made our way up north to Assisi, where we visited the tomb of Carlo Acutis. And Carlo Acutis, if you're not familiar with him, he was a teenager who died of leukemia. He had a love for the Eucharist. In fact, he being a teenager, actually knowing how to work a computer, coded a program to catalog the Eucharistic miracles. And here's where the food part comes in. Because if you'd actually look at the Eucharistic miracles, the host turning into flesh, the wine and the chalice turning into blood, the scientists who study these things, because we're not making this stuff up as we go along, scientists who studied it discovered several key strange things of these Eucharistic miracles over our church's history, the best kept secrets. They discovered that the blood type is AB positive, making them a universal recipient. That means he can take our blood and turn it into his. It's the divinization process. It's the same blood type on the Shroud of Turin. Interesting, the cell structures, you know how blood's supposed to show man and the father and the mother's genes? They only find the mother's genes because God the Father is more mysterious. But the thing that freaks them all out is that the piece of flesh is actually heart tissue. Heart tissue. Could it be that when we receive the Eucharist, we're receiving the the encouragement of God? Could God be putting his heart in us? That's why we pray, Jesus, meek and humble of heart, make my heart like unto thine. It's amazing that the food of Christ is his heart, and we're supposed to become what we eat. And I'm just going to simply tell you that that is where we find hope, because we sometimes hope that our hearts will be healed from its brokenness. What does it require? get to Mass and pay attention. Because when you do, you'll notice something about Mass. Listen to this, ready? The Lord be with you. It's like Simon Says, I love being Catholic. But now listen, the Lord be with you. Lift up your heart. Do you hear it? That mutual exchange. I give you, God, my broken heart. Can you please give me yours so that your love can beat in me? And we are to become, as Mom and Mother Church says, become what you eat. And then we become literally images of hope. I want to just simply close by saying thank you for the invitation to come. I hope this made sense. If not, it's because you weren't asking any questions. And therefore, if you were bored, it's not my fault. We just have to keep hungering and asking, knocking and seeking. And when you do, you're going to discover that God, in the book of Revelation, says that Jesus stands at the door and he knocks. And if we open and let him in, it says he will enter and have supper with you. What will you feed him? But more importantly, what will he give to you that will give you hope? So I'm simply going to close with one admonition, but also an invitation. And I know it might seem inappropriate because you just ate, but hopefully it'll make sense. You ready? Bon appetit. Thank you for that. I won because I cheated. I put holy water in the marinade, okay? Actually, I will say that I won because I honestly prayed. I pulled out my rosary and I started praying it. This was on live TV, and there were a bunch of other Catholics in the crowd pulling out rosaries and praying for me. I think I won because God knew that if I lost, I wouldn't be invited here. Who would want to come and listen to the loser priest on the Food Network? Prayer gives hope and victory. Yes, sir. How embarrassing Father Steve is. I will tell you that, okay, so yeah, Father Steve and I are classmates in Rome, and he is someone who, honestly, he's going to hate this, but I admire his wit, his intelligence, his incredibly disarming, humorous personality, and he is also an incredible dancer. You all have got to see. He can do a river dance Irish tap like none other. But what I admire most is the fact that he's willing to just spend time. Whenever I come to Oklahoma City, we'll text each other, and he's always so hospitable. He makes a point to come and visit, and we'll have a meal. And I'm going to tell you, I find hope in people like him. Any last minute questions, knowing that this side of the room won? Well, again, thank you so much. I am going to be available. I'm happy to dedicate any of the resources there. I've written 5 books. 4 of them are only available, 1 sold out. And there are aprons, which are black and therefore slimming. But they are, more importantly, reminders of the hospitality. Whenever you put one on, you become a servant. And hopefully you're going to be serving up some good things and platinggrace.com.